Annyeonghaseyo. I told hello to you all in Korean. Well, today I am going to tell you a Korean folktale. Long, long ago, there lived a prince who loved to listen to stories. Whoever he met, he asked him to tell him a story. Every time, a new story. But most of the stories he heard from his servant, who took great care of him. Every night, the old servant would tell the prince a new story and he would listen to it very carefully. And at the end of the story, he would tell him that please don't tell this story to anyone else. This story is only for me. And this story should not go out of the four walls of this room. And the servant obliged. In this way, every day he heard a new story, and days passed. Now the prince has become a big boy. He is 16 years old. And now the king, his father, thought that he should get him married. And so the king and the queen, they chose a very beautiful princess for him of the nearby kingdom. And finally, the wedding date was fixed. So, just 2 days before that, the king just opened the braid of the prince. In those days, young boys used to keep a long braid. They will keep long hairs which will be tied into a beautiful braid. So he opened it and rolled it up to a bun and put a long clip on it. That was how the tradition was. And they put a skull-shaped clip on it where they will put the long clip to hold the hair properly, hold the bun properly. And they decked the prince very nicely with expensive clothes and beautiful jewelry and ornaments, and he looked really very, very handsome. And now, when all the preparations were going on in the house, as the old servant passed along the room of the prince, he heard some whispering sounds, some murmurs from somewhere. He thought the prince is not inside his room, then who is talking? He just heard very, very carefully through the windows, and he got to know that many people were there who were murmuring. So he just opened the window and looked inside, but there were no people. There were the spirits of the stories. He had heard the stories for so many days, and they were all kept inside the room, and now the spirits of those stories were talking to themselves, and they were really angry. They were saying, the prince, he has kept them in that room very tight and in a very uncomfortable position because he had never shared them with anyone. Because the nature of the stories is they should be told to everyone. If you listen to a story, you should tell to others. The story should be shared so that they will cross the many lands, many rivers, many oceans to reach to different people. But the prince has been very unfair to them. He has just kept them captive inside the room, and they were very, very angry with him, for they were there in that room stuffed for so many days, and that was really unfair of the prince, isn't it? So now they are going to take revenge. One of the stories said, we have been in a terrible situation, in a very difficult position for so many years, and now the prince is going to marry. I want to take revenge. The another story, spirit of another story said, yes, I am also thinking of that same. So, and we can do that very easily. One story said, in my story, there are poisonous berries. So when the prince will go tomorrow to the bride's home, he will be crossing the path. And in that path, on that path, I will become a tree and I will be the berries with a very bright red color. And when the prince will eat one of it, the prince will die instantly. Then another said, if that couldn't be done, if that didn't materialize, then I will be a very bubbling spring with a gourd sailing on it. So, looking at me, the prince will feel very thirsty. He would want to drink water with the help of that gourd. But when he will drink the water, he will be poisoned to death. Another story said, and if that didn't materialize, then I will be a hot iron blade. When the prince will get down from the horse at the bride's place, he will have to set foot on a bag of chaff, and I will hide within it. So when he'll put his foot on that, his foot will get burnt badly and he will become sick forever. Then another story spirit said, yes, and if that didn't work, then I will become a very poisonous snake and will hide under his mattress on his bed, and when he will sleep at night, I will bite him and he will be dead instantly. Listening to all these things, the old servant was shocked. He could think of that what is going to happen if these spirits of the stories will take revenge like this. He was very, very scared, and he wanted to save the prince at any cost, for he loved him like anything, because he has brought him up from the time he was born, and he loved him so much. So he decided that he's definitely going to save the prince. But he didn't tell about all these things what he heard to anybody else, because he thought that if he's going to tell them, then most probably they won't be able to save the prince. So the very next day, when the wedding procession was to begin, the old servant went and said to the king that I am going to lead the prince's horse. But the king said, no, you cannot go. You have 1,000 other works here to be done, so many arrangements to be made. But he said, no, I will go with the prince. And he led the horse. He took care of the horse, and the prince rode on it. So as they went, they came across a tree which was laden with red, luscious berries. Looking at that, the prince said, I want to have one of that. But now the servant said, oh no, there's no time to stop and go for berries. We should better leave, because now the king will get angry if we are waiting here now. So they moved on. Now, by that time, the prince was very thirsty. When they came across the spring with its bubbling water and the gourd floating on it, it was as if the spring is welcoming them to have a drink of that water. And he said, I want to drink the water. But the servant said, no, you cannot drink water from here, just from an ordinary gourd. There, when we'll reach at the bride's place, you will get plenty of water, different types of juices served in porcelain. Why to wait and waste time here? Now the prince was very much annoyed. He was thinking, how is denying him, how is not obeying him? Then he got annoyed and he said, if I tell this to my father, the king, he is going to dismiss you. But the old servant did not listen to anything, and they rode off. Now there is the bride's home, and at the bride's place, when he was going to get down and put his foot on the bag of chaff, the servant very cunningly just pushed him, gave him a little push, and he fell down to the other side. But now the prince could not say anything to him amid so many people. He felt bad. So he saved the prince from stamping on the bag of chaff with the hot iron hidden inside it, and he saved the prince. So the wedding took place. There was beautiful arrangements, beautiful lights everywhere. There were colorful fountains, and the princess was decked very beautifully. She was looking so nice, so gorgeous, with beautiful pearls, jewelries, diamonds, and her hair made so beautifully, laden with different kinds of flowers, and she was looking the most gorgeous and beautiful bride. The wedding took place very nicely, everything was done very well. Now it was time for them to return home. When they returned, the queen and others were waiting there to welcome them. They welcomed them, and food was served, and everyone danced and sang, and time went on very nicely. And now it was time for them to retire, to go to bed. So before they could go to bed to sleep, this old servant, he rushed in and stopped them from stepping onto the bed. He said, "Just wait." And now the prince was furious. "What is wrong with you?" He asked, "What is wrong with you? Why are you behaving in this way?" He didn't say anything. He simply lifted the mattress, and there were thin snakes all coiled up into different kinds of different bunches here and there. And he took out his sword and slayed them. He slayed all the snakes in before the prince. And thereafter he told the prince everything, the entire story of how he heard the story spirits talking to themselves and what their plan was. And now the prince could realize his mistake. He said he had done the biggest mistake of not sharing the stories he had heard from many people from many different places. Because it is the nature of the stories are that they should be shared so that they can reach far and wide, and many people can listen to the stories and enjoy them. So this was the story of the Story Spirits Korean folktale. So that's the end of my story. Thank you so much for listening to my story.